Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mohammed Sufyan Ruslan, and today my group and I will be presenting about the differences between iOS and Android. So this is the contents that we'll be presenting in our presentation today. So I'm going to start presenting about the introduction of iOS and Android. So in today's era, smartphones are one of the most crucial devices a human being can have. Majority of things in today's generation requires the use of smartphones. Every smartphone have a dedicated operating system installed in order for it to work. Two of the most dominant ones in the market are Android and iOS. Android is a mobile OS built especially for touchscreen mobile devices that is based on a modified version of Linux kernel and other open source software. It is free and it is an open source software. So with the source code known as the Android Open Source Project or AOSP. So Google develops Android until the most recent revisions and upgrades are ready for release, at which point the source code is made available to the AOSP. On the other hand, iOS is a mobile OS created and developed by Apple Incorporated, exclusively for its own devices. Although certain sections of it are open source under the Apple Public Source License and other licenses, it is an unshared software. The updates are distributed in the form of unencrypted zip files. On all modern iOS devices, iOS checks for the availability of the updates on a regular basis, and if one is available, it will prompt the user to allow its automated installation.
So which one is more reliable, iOS or Android? So in terms of reliability, iOS is more reliable than Android. This is because iOS takes less time to get a software update on the devices compared to Android. When the iOS devices can support the latest software, it will immediately get the software update as the new software is out and ready to be installed for the compatible iOS devices. On the Android side, the software must get the update from the Google to make sure that it works properly and optimized before it can be released for the compatible devices. iOS has less hiccup and slowdowns than the Android. The main advantage that describes the reliability of iOS devices has again the Android is this leap in performance. The processing power that embedded in the iOS devices are much more powerful than the Android processing power. The iOS operating system is created to be optimized with the Apple devices to make sure that it works at its best. Apple does not have third-party programs that the user can install on the device. This can decrease the risk that the iOS devices from being infected by the malicious software. The iOS devices are more restricted and controlled than the Android devices. For example, Huawei devices obviously runs Android operating system, while the iPhone runs the iOS. As you can see, the benchmark score shows that the iPhone has more stable score than the Huawei that has inconsistent score throughout the benchmark test.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad and I will continue with the security of Android operating system and also iOS operating system. So first of all, for Android operating system, it has a low security. This is because Android operating system does not have any company who owns it. Next, only larger name in Android phone companies such as Samsung, Huawei, and others receive Android operating system update. Next is Android operating system use Google for their security. Next, we move on to iOS operating system. First of all, it is being controlled by Apple company. So they are a company that holds iOS operating system. So it basically has a higher security than Android operating system. Next is customization to app is limited, so that iOS operating system is a bit hard to being hacked. Next, older phone may still receive new updates and security phones, which means that older version of Apple iOS with outdated iOS still can receive new updates from Apple company, so that a phone gets new features and also a better security.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rashidin Muhammad Zahari bin Salim. My metric number is 2020898636. So today I would like to talk about the 1 megabyte size and Android versus iOS, which is ease of design. Material design is used as a standard design for Android app design, where it focuses a lot of shadow motion for elements to make sure the navigation easier for the users, where the titles placed on the left. Meanwhile, for iOS, they call it as flat design, or known as human interface guidelines. Less shadowing, which gives elements a layer of feeling on top of each other. That's why that makes the iOS design usually more vibrant in terms of color, just to make sure the navigation goes smoother and easier. The contents do comes first, which helps the users to navigate through pages easily. That's why the iOS title tend to be underline 5 elements, where the first one is programming language, development environment, system design, development complexity, and development aims. The first one is programming language. Under the programming language, the iOS, they use the Swift proprietary language. They designed that for app development, while the Android, they heavily relies on Java or Kotlin as an alternative. Which one is faster, to be honest? I can say coding on Swift requires less time rather than getting around Java, because Java is a language that needs high readability. So the second one is development environment. Android developers, they utilize Android Studio, which is a proprietary tool that introduced by Google by 2013 as a brand under Google, and they are right now being using as a standard for Android. While the iOS developers, they are heavily going on a proprietary Xcode tool, because this is way more easy to get around. In terms of system-specific design, both actually bound to be same, but it's just a little bit different. The smallest clickable areas for iOS is 44px, while for Android is 48px. The main difference actually lies on navigation and architecture organization, because Android apps, they develop using partition, where coding team will break down the app into fragments and activity, while the iOS application architecture relies on view control. There are few types of such used for app development. There's page view, tab, split view controllers, and so on. The next one is development complexity. So when it comes to iOS versus Android app development complexity, the Android loses by big numbers, because it has a lot to do with device fragmentation, while Apple releases a limited range of devices, thus has a small range of screen dimensions to account for. The last one, I can call it as developer aims or market share, because normally iOS, they have a near miss in terms of users, because they have almost 53% of market share in US, while the Android have 46% or 10%. But in Europe and Asia, the iOS, they loses a lot, because the Europe, they have 32% for iOS, and the share for Android go for 72%, while on Asia, the iOS just got 13%, while on Android they have 84%. So the developer actually heavily aiming the Android, because among 10 people, I can randomly say about 6 among of them will use Android. So because of that, developer actually aims highly on Android.
I want to talk about the flexibility of Android versus the iOS. In terms of the flexibility, Android is more user-friendly than the iOS. It involves gaining access to the hardware, file system, and function that are unavailable in the iOS. Android has a highly configurable operating system that provide user a lot of control how things are set up. When it's come to organizing apps in the smartphone, Android is way better than the iOS. On the home screen, user can put the most important and most frequently used app, while hiding the less frequently used app. Meanwhile, iPhone only allowed user to group the application in the folder. iOS was a narrow platform that only allowing one app to be displayed at a time. Settings, strict limitation, background activities. It is limited in comparison to Android in certain ways, but it is expanded features advanced capability like sharing, extension widget, and multitask. However, Android flexibility extends much beyond the ability to choose which application you want to use to open internet. On some Android tablet with x86-based chipset, it's allowed to simulate the Windows application. Thanks to a complete keyboard and USB Type-C connection, the newer Android devices has some of the capabilities of a laptop.
My name is Ahmad Faizal bin Tajuddin, and I will explain about the efficiency for Android optimization is diverse from one manufacturer to another manufacturer. For example, hardware is created by Qualcomm and MediaTek, rather than Google, and the operating system must be universal across all devices and brands. In iOS, a closed ecosystem is makes for tighter integration. As a result, iPhone do not require super powerful specification to compete with high-end Android phones. The hardware is extremely optimized because Apple regulates the hardware, the software, and the ecosystem. Android has higher failure rate than iOS because according to Blanco, the failure rate for Android was 44% compared to 25% only for iOS. For Android, it used Google Assistant, which supported in 30 languages, worked as Genie Assistant and organizer for the user. Meanwhile, Siri is used in iOS, which is the best for basic guidance, but supported in 17 languages only. Android are basically outdated after 2 or 3 years because it usually stops receiving updates after 2 years. Meanwhile, iOS hardware will be outdated in about 5 to 6 years because of the consistent updates that make it last longer than Android. For example, like iPhone 6, which was manufactured 6 years ago, but still have the newest updates.
Continue with the advantages of Android operating system and also iOS. So, first of all, for Android advantages, it has an open system. Android is by default more exposed to the system's inner working. Android operating system is also flexible. Android's open source software makes it easy for developers to get started. Next, Android operating system has a good design. Google's broad design standards can help you create an aesthetically pleasing layout and an intuitive Android user interface. Next, we move on to the advantages of iOS. iOS basically has a better performance. iOS is a more reliable and a user-friendly platform. Next, iOS also has a better integration with devices. In comparison to Android, which has 1,000 mobile phones with multiple sorts of systems and more laws, iOS has only 20 different types of mobile devices. Because there is significantly less device fragmentation, screen size and resolution are less important, and the development process is typically easier and more faster.
Alright, so now I'm going to continue the presentation by explaining about the disadvantages. Alright, so I'm going to start for Android. So there are 3, which are fragmentation, testing, and cost. For fragmentation, there are many devices with different resolutions and screen sizes to deal with. So this greatly complicates the design of applications and development of user interfaces. Android development teams should consider this when they want to create responsive app designs that work well on many devices and evaluate the impact of new feature releases. For the next one, testing. Due to the multiple devices that uses Android, quality assurance specialists need to spend more time on testing to ensure that it works properly. So this increases the workload and the time spent before the product is released. And last but not least, for Android, which is cost, due to the heavy work needed to be spent on fragmentation as well as testing, this increases the total cost need to be spent for the OS and overall staff salaries. Okay, for iOS, there are 2, which are application release and customization. For application release, App Store has a very strict review rules, so apps may be rejected because of vulnerabilities, poor performances, or lack of useful content. So applications also require submissions for review, which usually takes several days. And for customization, setting up an app becomes a daunting task due to the many restrictions that iOS imposes. This lack of flexibility can also affect the app's popularity as all apps must follow design guidelines, making it a bit difficult for the app to stand out from the crowd.
In conclusion, for Android, the OS handles so many devices. Most of their older version devices are not able to run new security updates, unlike iOS, which has fewer devices, so they can provide support for each device for a longer time than platforms with hardware OS fragmentation. The design of both Android and iOS has the privilege that user interface designers create the same functionality in both systems to facilitate the user.